With just a couple hours left in the NHL trade deadline this season, the Blue Jackets find themselves, after being one of the hottest teams in the NHL over the past couple months, being one of the coldest teams in the NHL over the past couple of weeks, but they still hold a wild card spot with the Carolina Hurricanes right now. Granted, the Carolina does have a couple of games in hand, but the interesting part of the trade deadline today was that the Blue Jackets were close to getting a deal done that would send Andreas Athanasious to the Blue Jackets, but ultimately that deal fell through. He ended up going to Edmonton. It's funny though, I was looking at that deal originally, I was like, please no more rentals, but I was like, oh, hang on a second, the guy's an RFA, he could be under team control for a little bit. He was a buy low kind of guy that you could potentially get right now for cheap because of how poorly the Red Wings are playing, and he's been playing. He could have came to Columbus and improved and been better. So, I was starting to warm up to it. I was starting to enjoy the idea that seeing him go for 2 seconds did not seem too bad, but at the same time, if you're the Blue Jackets, sometimes you just have to pass things up if the price is too steep. You don't want to overpay. You always got to be thinking about the future here. So I'm not upset about the Blue Jackets not going out there and completing this trade. I was always kind of neutral on the Blue Jackets making a trade during the deadline regardless because of the way they've been playing in general. You look at the way this season's been, it's been a very resilient bunch. You cannot stress that enough, how it's been one of the most resilient seasons out of a sports team that I've seen in quite some time. You talk about the big free agent losses, you talk about the man games lost due to injury this season. They've been playing very good hockey this season, even with all those problems, and it's been great to see, but it does appear that the straw that finally broke the camel's back was the Seth Jones injury. That's going to keep him out for 8 to 10 weeks. A huge loss to this Blue Jackets team, a team that has been centered around defense all season, losing their top guy, and it leaves a lot of question marks. I mean, first of all, let's talk about Seth Jones real quick. Here's a stat for you. Seth Jones, the last time the Blue Jackets allowed more than 3 goals in a game with Seth Jones on the ice was December 14th. Absolutely incredible when you look back at that. They just put something like that in perspective of how well they really were playing. Now you look at these last 7 games now where Jones hasn't been playing. The Blue Jackets are yet to pick up a win. They've got some overtime losses, and more importantly, we brought up the 3 goals for a reason, or the more than 3 goals for a reason, and that's because the Blue Jackets have now done that 4 times since Seth Jones has gone down, allowed more than 3 goals in a game. And I'm not one to panic. I completely believe, every team's going to go through a losing streak. The hottest teams go through losing streaks. Heck, even Tampa Bay, you want to call them, struggled to start the season. Look how great they're playing now. Teams go through them and you start to see where the holes and the cracks are. It just helps you build moving forward, really. It's a learning process per se. But the big thing is, for me, I look at it as a bump in the road. How big's that bump in the road going to be? Is it going to be a 10 to 12 game stretch where the team struggles a little bit and they turn it around? Or is it going to be a bump in the road they can't overcome for the rest of the season, which is a big question mark heading into, things such as the trade deadline, whether you should be buyers and sellers. And this team has proved everyone wrong all year. So I'm not going to go out there and say I don't think they can do it without Jones. I don't think they can do it without Bjorkstrand. But it's tough. It is really tough when you bring up guys like that, when you lose your top goal scorer, when you lose your top defenseman, all the names, we can already talk about the goaltending, the other, all the other players that the Blue Jackets have seen go down to injury this year, currently injured right now. So I don't think we can ever count out this Blue Jackets team. But I do truly believe that this Seth Jones loss, it hits a whole lot differently here. This is a Blue Jackets team that's ranked 27th in the league as far as goals per game is concerned, but they're ranked 2nd in the league as far as goals against are concerned. In other words, the defense has been outstanding, and there has been a lot of lackluster offense. We've seen a lot of dry spells. We've seen the power play struggle a lot. It's happened a lot this year. There's 14 overtime losses, and you look at all those overtime losses because I think a lot of that has attributed to the fact of the Blue Jackets just lacking skill players in general on the ice. I don't mean to, bash on any player on the team or say that, but you got a lot of role players on a team. The Blue Jackets got a lot of players that do a lot of great things on the ice, but they don't really have those notorious, dynamic type of players that you stick on the 3-on-3 overtime drills where they'll excel. And that is kind of, whether that be because they have players that are injured or whether just because they're lacking it in general. But it means so much because when you see the best defenseman on a team go down, you have to assume no matter how great this team plays throughout the rest of the season, there's gonna be more goals allowed. Period. I hope Korpisalo's coming back soon, or he should be back very shortly, really, and he can come back and hopefully give this team a spark and get them moving in the right direction again, or maybe Merzlikins can do the same now. but you just, in general, have to expect that there's gonna be more goals allowed when you see guys like that come off the ice, which means in turn, if they want to start winning games again, they're gonna have to score more goals. And I think Werenski starts to settle in more and more. A lot of, the big subject of, debate was gonna be how does he respond without Seth Jones as he tried to do too much on the ice, and we've seen that from time to time. Ultimately, I think he settles in and plays a lot better throughout the rest of this season. It's a lot of question marks that are still yet to be answered here. But we'll talk about the Andreas trade just one more time, because it was an interesting one, because I think a lot of us can forget real quickly that this was one of the hottest teams in hockey all of 2 weeks ago. So, you can't really panic about just a 2-week stretch, no matter how sloppy it has looked from the Blue Jackets standpoint here. And then you talk about even if the Blue Jackets were to make playoffs, there was going to need to be some sort of offensive push somewhere, right? Whether it was guys returning or whether they traded for guys, they was going to need a little bit more offensive firepower, I think, if they wanted to make a push stick. It was a great team from a defensive standpoint built, which gets you far in playoffs, but I still think you wanted to see that little extra push from the offensive side to feel really confident as a Blue Jackets fan going through playoffs. But it didn't happen. The Blue Jackets did bring Devin Shore over, though, via trade from Anaheim, so we'll see what he can bring to the table for these Jackets. So the way I look at it is, it's still a team that feels like they're in it. And I love it. I love every bit of it. They're not going out there and they don't look like they're down on themselves out there. They still look like they're fighting to win games. Sure, it's been sloppy from time to time, but they're a fighting bunch. Overall, you talk about a team where I think you look and say these next 3 to 5 games are going to be ever so important for the Blue Jackets in their hopes in making playoffs. You look at Ottawa. Ottawa tonight's going to be key. You could very well say that this game against Ottawa tonight is the biggest morale game of the season, because the last thing you want to see happen here if you're Columbus is watching Ottawa sell their team away at the trade deadline, knowing Ottawa's out of playoffs. You need these wins desperately, and then you fall to a team that is essentially given up on the season. So hopefully that's not the case tonight.